Hello, everybody. To finish out our week on Earth Day, I wanted to talk about the coral reefs in the ocean. So let's read about the Brilliant Deep Rebuilding the World's Coral Reefs by Kate Messner and Matthew Forsythe. It starts with one. One night after a full moon, the corals begin to spawn, releasing first one, then millions of tiny lives, until the waters swirl like a snow globe. Some become food for hungry fish. Some are washed into the deep sea. Some drift in the currents until they come to rest, not too deep, on the ocean floor. If one is lucky, it lands in a place where it can grow. This one will begin a coral reef. Ken Nedemeyer grew up near Florida's Kennedy Space Center, watching America race toward the moon. Before men took off in rockets, Ken's father worked at NASA as an engineer. Ken watched his father's team send unmanned rockets, Little Joe Redstone, Atlas, toward the stars. Men followed, Alan Shepard and John Glenn. It seemed like just about anything might be possible if you set your mind to it. But Ken's dreams weren't in the stars. He loved the ocean. He watched TV shows about underwater explorer Jacques Cousteau. He visited the beach whenever he could, swimming far out to the world of angelfish and sea stars. The reefs of the Florida Keys teemed with life. They painted the ocean floor fire red and murky gold. How could the reefs grow so large? What made all different colors and shapes? How could such tiny creatures build such elaborate homes of rock? Ken learned to scuba dive and began collecting fish to keep and study at home. At one point, he had 30 aquariums in his bedroom, all bursting with life. Ken's favorite place was always out on the reef until things began to change. One summer, hotter than the rest, Ken noticed the corals were losing their color and there weren't as many fish. The sea urchins had started to die. They are the gardeners of the reef, tiny groundskeepers who control the algae, but Ken didn't know that at the time. Even scientists didn't understand what an important role the sea urchins played until they were gone. Ken watched his favorite place in the world begin to fade away. The reefs were dying, and it seemed like there was nothing he could do to save them. But one day, that changed. Ken was all grown up, operating a live rock farm in the Florida Keys. Live rocks aren't really alive. They're rocks covered with algae, mollusks, sponges, and other invertebrates. They're used in saltwater aquariums as decoration and to filter waste from the water, turning poisons like pneumonia and nitrates into harmless compounds. This makes the water safer and healthier for everything that lives in it. And growing them is really just a matter of patience. Placing rows of bare rocks on the ocean floor and waiting for the marine life to move in. On one moonlit night, a nearby coral colony spawned, and a few of those delicate little lives found their way to Ken's rocks. They grew into staghorn corals. Staghorn corals are protected, illegal to take from the ocean floor. But the law says if a coral colony grows on a live rock farm, the owner can keep it. Ken could have sold his specimens to someone with a saltwater aquarium, but instead, he and his daughter had an idea. As the corals grew, they cut off pieces and attached those pieces to other rocks. They discovered they could use those first colonies to grow more and more corals. What would happen if someone grew a coral colony and then tried to plant it on a dying reef? Would it grow? Could that colony help rebuild the reefs Ken loved? Could a reef come back to life? Ken made plans to go to the reef where he loved diving as a kid to find out. He selected his coral colonies. He loaded his scuba gear and supplies and set out for the reef. One hopeful dive, one optimistic experiment. 6 small coral colonies, each one the size of a hand, with the fingers stretched, glued onto a limestone surface where the reef had once flourished and was now bleached and barren. Would they grow? Ken and his friends came back to check on the coral colonies again and again. Each month, they had grown larger. It was too soon to say if the reef would fully recover, if the fish would return, but it was beginning. Ken started a group called the Coral Restoration Foundation, a small army of volunteers on a mission to restore the reefs. They hang bits of coral on special underwater trees and lines where the corals can grow. When the corals are large enough, these farm-raised colonies are loaded onto boats with volunteers, dive equipment, and tools. Then it's out to a new home one of the corals will help to build. Volunteers take great care with this homecoming. They search for just the right spot, a place where each coral colony can hold on once it's grown enough to attach to the reef on its own. Divers scrape off any algae. They use chipping hammers, scraping and banging to get the surface even and smooth. Then, with a careful jab of epoxy, just the size of a Hershey kiss, volunteers attach the coral colonies, piece by piece, arm by arm, hoping they will grow on their own. Today, the transplants are not only surviving, but they are also reproducing. Ken's group has planted tens of thousands of coral colonies on the reefs in the Florida Keys, and now he's working with other countries, teaching people how to grow corals of their own to save the reefs they love too. Tonight, the moon will be full and bright. The corals may spawn, and if one tiny life lands in just the right spot, another new colony will grow, and then another, and then another, and another. It starts with one. The end. So how can kids help? The Coral Restoration Foundation has hundreds of volunteers who help to farm and transplant corals. They practice attaching dead corals to a table with Play-Doh to get ready for the big day. They are carefully trained above water before they dive to work on the reef, because when they're actually underwater, it's much harder to talk and learn. You can help the Foundation's volunteers with their efforts, even if you don't know how to scuba dive. You can adopt a coral program to help pay for its projects. A single coral fragment costs about $100 to grow and plant. Families in classrooms can plant a coral colony or even adopt a whole tree in the nursery by making donations through the Foundation's website. Please do your part and explore online and think of ways that you can help ocean life and the earth. Happy Earth Day to everyone, and thank you so much for participating in our Earth Day celebration this week. We appreciate you all, and we hope you have a wonderful weekend. Bye, guys.